Today's lesson is 1-1, which is multiply multi-digit decimals. So for the warm-up, we are multiplying 19 and 51, and we're dividing 539 divided by 11. Now, you could do this any way you want. I am going to use the traditional algorithm. So here, I'm going to multiply 19 times 51. So we're going to multiply 9 times 1 and 1 times 1. And then we're going to put in a placeholder. We're going to annex a 0 right there. And then we're going to multiply the 5 times the 19. So that's going to be 5 times 9 is 45. Very good. And then 5 times 1 is 5 plus 4 is 9. And then we add those together. So this is 9, 6, 9. So 19 times 51 is 969. For number 2, for the division, I'm also going to use the traditional algorithm. Okay? So we're going to use the little division house. We have 539 divided by 11. So here, 11 goes into 53 4 times. Very good. 4 times 11 is 44. And then we subtract. So here when we subtract, we have to borrow from that 5. So 13 minus 4 is 9. And then we're going to bring down that 9. And then we divide again. So 11 goes into 99 9 times. 9 times 11 is 99. And we have a 0 remainder. So for this example, we're going to multiply 3/10 times 1 1/2 using a visual model. Now, because one of the factors here is greater than 1, but less than 2, then we're going to use 2 of these 10 by 10 grids, okay? And each one of these squares, because this is a 100 square, each one of those squares represents 100. So we're going to use a visual model to multiply 3/10 times 1 1/2, okay? So what we're going to do here is we want to color in 3/10 of the entire amount, okay? 3/10 of the entire amount. Now, if we're looking at 3/10, if I want to look at these hundredths, okay, if I want to make this hundredths, how many of each of these are we going to color in? Here, we annex a 0 here, that's going to be 30 hundredths. If each one of these represents 100th, then how many of these are we going to color in? 30 of them, because we want 30 hundredths. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Okay. So we colored in 30 hundredths on each one of them. Okay? So that's 30 hundredths on each one, that's 60 200ths, which simplifies to 30 hundredths, which simplifies to 3/10. Does everybody understand that? Okay? So that's the 3/10. Now we want to multiply this times 1 1/2. The whole thing is how much? 100 100ths, which is 1 whole, right? So this whole thing is we're going to color this whole thing, and then if I want 5/10 or half of the second one, what are we going to color in on this side? 5/10, right? Or 50 each of the squares. Does that make sense? So here we have 1 whole and then a half colored in. So when we want to look to see on the visual model how much 3/10 times 1 1/2 is, you look to see where the overlap is. And of course, when I mixed yellow and blue, that made green. So how many of these greens did we have colored in? So there's 30 here, right? And there's how many here? 15. So 30 plus 15 is 45. And which one? How much is each one of those squares worth? 100, right? So right now we have 15 hundredths colored in, right? So this, when we multiply, is equal to 45 hundredths. So example 1 is multiplying using an equation, okay? So we're going to multiply 25 hundredths times 6 tenths. Again, you guys, we're going to use a traditional, just like we did in the warm-up. And when you do this, you're going to write one on top of the other, okay? So I will write 0.25 times 0.6, okay? Now, when we multiply decimals, when you are adding or subtracting, you line up the decimals, right? When you are multiplying, you don't need to line up the decimals, and you'll find out why, okay? So now, we just multiply like normal, okay? Multiply like normal. Okay, so we've got 5 times 6 is 30, and then 6 times 2 is 12, 13, 14, 15, carry the 1, 6 times 0 of course is 0, plus 1 is 1. And now we're going to put in a placeholder, and now we're going to multiply that 0, right? Do I have to multiply the 0? You don't really have to because it's in the front, okay? So, but I'm going to do it just to show you, okay? So now I'm going to cross out my carries so I don't get confused. So here this is 0 times 5, 0. 0 times 2, 0. 0 times 0, 0. You see why you don't have to multiply times the zeros? And then we just add. So we have 0, 5, 1, 0. Now, this is the reason why we don't have to line up the decimals. When you are multiplying decimals, you have to count how many digits are behind the decimal in the problem, and that will be how many numbers, how many digits have to be behind the decimal in the answer. So, here, how many numbers do we have behind the digit? 2. How many numbers do we have behind the decimal here? 1. So, if I add those together, how many do we have to have behind the decimal in the answer? 3. So, starting at the end, see that? Starting at the end, we need 3 numbers behind. So, that's 1, 2, 3. And there's where my decimal goes. So, there's where my decimal goes. So, we have 0.150. Is everybody clear? Now let me ask you this. Do I need this trailing 0 at the end? No. So you take that out, and your final answer is 0.15. So that's 15 hundredths. With your table partners, I would like you to do this problem. So here, again, you multiply like normal, and then you look to see how many numbers are behind the decimal in the problem. That means there are going to be that many numbers behind the decimal in the answer. So example 2 is multiply decimals. And again, we're going to do this example. You just have to watch and pay attention, okay? It says to make nachos for a party, Jackson needs to buy 14.5 ounces of shredded cheese. If the cheese costs 34 cents per ounce, how much money can Jackson expect to spend on the cheese? Now, when you are working on a word problem, I do not expect you to write the entire problem down. I expect you to write down the important information. Okay? So what is important in here? All right, so you're going to write down, well, you're just going to watch right now. So Jackson needs 14.5 ounces of cheese. Okay? What else is important? Very good. So the cheese costs 34 cents per ounce. We want to know how much money can Jackson expect to spend on the cheese. Now, what operation are we going to do here? Of course, we're going to multiply. What word in this important information tells us that we need to multiply? Anybody? Per ounce. Very good. So per in math means multiply. Okay? Per in math means multiply. So we're going to multiply 14.5. So this is going to be 14.5 times the 34 cents times 34. This is what we're going to do. Is everybody clear? So we're going to, again, I like to write it up and down. Okay? So we're going to write 14.5 times 34, let me get my pen, times 34 cents. And again, when you are multiplying, you don't need to line up the decimals, correct? So here, we're going to multiply 5 times 4, 20. 4 times 4, 16, 17, 18. Carry it, so 18, carry the 1. And then 4 times 1, 4 plus 1 is 5. And then we're going to annex a 0. Cross out my carries so I don't get confused. And now we're going to multiply the 3. So here, this is 3 times 5, 15. 3 times 4, 12. 12 plus 1 is 13, carry the 1. And then 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1, 4. Now, this here, you guys, you don't have to multiply times this 0, okay? So now we're going to add here. So this is 0, that's 10, plus 8 is 13. All right. And then here we have 5 plus 3 is 8, plus 1 is 9. And then bring down that 4. Now, we've got one number here, 2 numbers here. So that means we need 3 numbers right now behind the decimal. So that's 1, 2, 3. There's my decimal. There's my amount. So my final answer is that he needs $4.93. Does everybody see you don't need this trailing 0 right here? Okay? So here, it says Belinda is buying some chocolate-covered snacks for her friends. The table shows the price of different snacks at a local store. We want to know how much will Belinda spend if she needs to buy 65 hundredths pounds or 0.65 pounds of chocolate-covered peanuts for her friends. And we want to round to the nearest cent if necessary. So the important information here is that the peanuts, chocolate-covered peanuts, cost $5.99 per pound. And then she wants to buy 65 hundredths pound. Is everybody clear with that? Yes. The operation is multiply because per in math means multiply. So we're going to multiply $5.99 times the 65 hundredths, 0.65. Okay? Now, we multiply. So 9 times 5 is 45. And then 9 times 5 again, 45. Plus 4 is 49. Good. Then 5 times 5 is 25. Plus 4 is 29. Now, I'm going to cross out those carries, put in my placeholder, and now I'm going to multiply the 6. So 6 times 9 is 54. Carry the 5. 6 times 9 is 54. Plus 5, 5 is 59. Good. And then 6 times 5 is 30. Plus 5 is 35. And now we add. So we've got 5. This is 13. Carry the 1. That's 18, 19. Carry the 1. 5, 7, 8, and 3. Now, we've got 2 numbers here and 2 numbers here. How many numbers do I need behind my decimal? 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. Now, the next part down here says round to the nearest cent if necessary. Now, when you're looking at money, you know you only go up to the hundredths place, right? So the hundredths place here is right there at the 9. That means that 3 tells me what to do. What does that 3 tell me to do?
Still stay in place.
It means to stay the same. Very good. So here, when we're rounding, she's going to spend $3.89. All right. Now here it says if there are not enough decimal places in the product, you need to blank. To annex a 0 means to blank. When multiplying decimals, you might need to annex 1 or more zeros to the left of the product to have the correct number of decimal places in the product. So if I need more places to move the decimal, what do I need to do? We need to add our placeholders. And adding the placeholder, you guys, what that means, another way to say that is annex the zeros. So annexing the 0 is adding the zeros in there, putting the placeholders. Okay? And here's your definition. It says to annex a 0 means to place a 0 at the beginning or the end of the decimal. Please make sure you fill that in.